Welcome to Launch Code, a premier business podcast, starring Evan Hafer, Matt Best, and Jared Taylor.
Well. What do we have
Evan.
here? Another Launch Code. Holy shit. I could not be happier today to introduce one of the finest men I know. The man, the myth, Dave Rutherford. What else can I say?
I don't know. What
Fuck,
else
man.
is there?
I want to do some like big booming fucking the man, the myth, the legend. That's right.
I'm blowing the mic
Dude,
out. He's like, God, I hate this guy
blowing
already.
it out. Fuck.
I can't scrub that. Dude, do you know how much I love you?
How much?
Like, there's a spectrum of love one man can give to another. There really is. But most of the time, it's real small because everybody gets a little homophobic and they don't want to rub up. You know? They're like, ooh, okay, I'll give you a little pat love, a little bad that. But, dude, I'm full blown, dude. I'd kiss you on the lips, bro. I'd squeeze your buns. Man, I'd name my child after you. That's how much I love you.
You gotta have a boy. You gotta have a boy first.
Bro, I just told you what's fixing to happen, right?
God,
four daughters.
4 girls.
4 daughters.
Well, holy crap, man. This has been a long time coming.
Thank you.
It has been a
so
long
much.
time coming. We've been talking about this for like 2 years. I was on your podcast, you and Marcus.
Dude,
last year.
I was just telling Dave how you were on with my first podcast,
That's
Navy
right.
SEAL
Shit.
Radio,
Yeah, that's right.
in 2013, bro.
That's right.
13 or 14? 14. Because I did I was like, dude, there are so many guys killing it in the entrepreneur world. Let's do a show about vetrepreneurs. And you were the first one by far that popped in my head.
That's right. That's when I was trying to start that crowdfunding site.
Yeah, Twist Rate, man.
Twist Rate.
God, it was brilliant.
Dirt napped it.
No, dude, come on, man. You did great. Think about what you learned about investing, about finance, about all that stuff because, dude, I was oblivious and still am, quite frankly, but you were like, bro, and then you do this, and you got your tranche, and you got just Series A, and I'm like, oh,
dude, that was such a. We tried, and it's so funny because I was into it. I was really, really fucking into it.
You were,
and
you were passionate, bro.
God, and that's just a testament to the fact that partners like that, and I think I've talked about it a little bit. Like partners were so important to that. My partners in that, Jeff was awesome. Jeff Kirkham's awesome. Yep. But we had another set of partners that it's not that they were bad dudes whatsoever. It's like a marriage where, and I've explained this to people so many times, where you go into partnerships and you go into marriages a lot where 2 people might not work out. That doesn't mean one of those 2 people or both those 2 people aren't good people. They're just not good together. And
as a man who just got divorced, I can tell you, and a man who's also messed up with partners in the past as well too, I can tell you it's a lot like that. And you have to be prepared for that. I think so often people don't do that, right? Dude, we're going to be the best ever. You're the coolest dude. I'm the coolest guy. Fuck, we can do anything we want, man. It'll always be perfect. But you know what? Let's take a good year to figure out this operating agreement, and let's really get to know each other on a business level. And
let's go through a bunch of confidence targets together and see if we really actually like clearing houses together. Because it's like I learned that about dudes before I went to war with them too. Like guys I thought were fucking stellar, awesome guys, and then you go to war, and then you're like, that dude's a fucking turd. But the funny thing is like everybody has their own perspective, and I'm sure if we were to reverse and ask them, they would be like, "Oh, fucking hate that guy." Right?
I'm like everybody says to my face, "Oh, Rut's the most motivating guy on the planet," but behind they're like, "What a shitbag that guy is."
I'm sure that's what they say about me. It's just like, "Oh God."
So let me ask you guys a question. So you guys are catching up, and I was here with Dave. Dave, right?
Yeah.
So I was here with Dave an hour before you got here. You guys go way back, it sounds like.
Yeah, we go way back.
Okay.
Like what year was that?
It
that,
was 2010.
Yeah, that's right.
It was January 20-something, 2010. Yeah. It was right after the Coast bombing.
Yeah,
where
that's right.
8 CIA people were blown up by a triple agent.
Yep.
And the person that was the base chief of that, I had actually just put through training not shortly before that, so that was a pretty tough day for me personally.
Right.
Hit the ground in Kabul, and the first person, this is my very first like downrange trip with the agency, right? Very first one. First person I meet, I get off. There's Evan sitting there with V, and I knew V from back in the teams, but you, and it was just like I heard you talk, and I was like, wait, is he allowed to be that sarcastic? And then you did it to everybody. It wasn't just like the flight guys or like kind of the support dudes. Then like we're around like important people, and you're just dishing it to them. I'm like, what the fuck, dude, is going on, dude? He's going to be on that bird out of here. First one thing flying. Yeah. And I remember me and Kate's, we stayed in your room for 5 days. Yeah. And it was the 5 most informative days I had in my entire time working for the Central Intelligence.
Are you serious?
Hands down.
Holy shit.
Yep.
Because all we did was just fuck off too. Like all we were doing was like laughing and telling stories.
Dude,
but it was super fun.
When you say informative, like I mean about like war and stuff, or like other things, like how to build an axe, or like what level of informative? Like,
do we start going Hava? All right, I like that. I love those. By the way, I've done a couple of Jewish Christian weddings together where I was the minister. Good. It was awesome. And the dance thing with the chair. God, I love
the
that.
Dance. Yeah, the chair. What is that called?
I don't know, but it's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun.
Until like Uncle Seymour is so annihilated, like he drops the thing and the bride tips over and smashes her head, and then you got to run up because you're a medic and try. But that's a whole nother story.
Put her head back together.
It was informative because Evan has a perspective that he figures things out really quickly. And I'm going to talk about you like I'm talking through you if you don't mind. But he does so in, when he comes across, obviously there's a deep level of sarcasm. But once you understand what he's getting at, and once he starts talking from his gut and from his heart and from his head, which is amazing because a lot of people can't fuse those together, the quality of information. And for me, it was, hey, listen, this is your first trip. This is what you need to expect. This is what you got to think about. This is what you got to do. We're your support here. This is how you need to start to act towards the case officers you're working with. This is, because teaching them on a flat range how to shoot, move, communicate, and do TCCC and some other things is one thing, but to be working with them in a high stress environment was a totally different thing. And if you haven't figured out, I can get a little high spun sometimes, and so a lot of people that'll rub the wrong way, in particular people that work, they're super secret squirrels and they don't like that.
Right.
So he was like, bro, love your energy, love this, but maybe down here.
Pull it on back down here.
And then, but once we were through that, because that took about 6 minutes, 7 minutes?
6-7 minutes.
Then it was his ideas. Because my big thing that I always asked everybody was, what's your exit strategy?
Right.
What's your plan?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? And he was the first dude that ever, and I had contracted years before with Blackwater when I first got out of the teams in 2003, and I worked for Blackwater 2004, 2005, 2006. And I'd always say, what's your plan? And I'm going to start a bar. I'm going to get a bar, or I'm going to crazy wazoo boring shit. He was like, no, man, I'm going to start this business, and I got an ID for this business. And he was free firing 50 cal business ideas at me. And I'm like, and I'm a little inquisitive. So I'm like, well, how are you going to do that? And he had thought about them all. And I was like, fuck, I like this dude. And that was it.
Yeah, that was it. Like I remember so well that room in Kabul, because dudes were coming through quite a bit, and you either mesh with people or you don't. It's just a super easy thing. Like most of the guys are awesome. They're stellar people, but like Rut comes through and you're like, man, that guy's fucking awesome. Like you're so
Thanks,
motivating, like coming through, and he's just like injects you with positive energy. Just like here's your dose of Rud. Just there you go, buddy. And
I just, for me, and everybody asks, are you always like this? Do you ever come down? And hell yeah, I mean, I can be a prick like the best of them, but I spent so much time in that mental space, that emotional space, as a result of the cultural conditioning from the teams. Like I walked in and you're like, dude, you were in the teams, and
It was the hair, man.
yeah, it's the long
hair is
flowing
beautiful.
locks,
Yeah,
man.
it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
I spent a lot of time on it, and I was so freaking negative as a default mechanism to prepare myself for that constant peer evaluation that is, I believe, a requirement of whatever unit you're with. That I became that guy. I was a jerk, and I was always hammering, and it wasn't like doing it for fun, sarcastic. I was like, I got off on that stuff with people, and getting out early and feeling like I missed everything, and I had some survivor's guilt with dudes and all this. When I finally got the opportunity to go back, I was like, I'm not gonna be that guy, and I want to be the person that, when I walk in the room, people aren't going to be like, oh, shit, fucking Rut's here. Like, oh, dude, Rut's here. Sweet.
Yeah.
Even if it sucks, we're still going to have a smile on our face, and we're going to have a good time. So,
No, that's interesting that you say that. So, like, when I started working with Black Rifle and stuff, like, I looked at Evan and Matt and Logan and, like, what their skill set was and what they were good at. And it's like, all right, how can I add value to this team and this organization to where I am valuable? So they got this covered, they got this covered, they got this covered. Okay, where are, well, I guess the term you guys would use, targets of opportunity. So like I thought, all right, well, Twitter's not being utilized. Maybe I can get that ramped up and going. Or some other avenue, and it's like always trying to add value and be a positive where people want you around.
Hands
because,
down.
there's a saying like, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. That's actually not the only answer. Sometimes the squeaky wheel gets replaced.
for sure.
Right.
And most people don't realize that. And I think that comes with maturity, like you're saying, I used to be a raging asshole to people, and I'm polarizing. People love me, they hate me, but
very,
it's
very.
I'm fine with that.
I'm struggling, Evan.
Are you?
I'm struggling. I
Are you
mean, I
struggling?
want to love them, but
Yeah.
I love
You're-
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I'm
it's black,
struggling.
white.
Like,
It's
I'm
super.
trying, man.
Yeah.
And one day it can be black and one day it can be white, but
Yeah.
you can rotate.
You can rotate. You can,
But no, it's interesting you say that because
Well, think about
wanting to be
personnel.
accepted, yeah.
Think about personnel, right? And for us, it was this wild experiment. You had guys from all these different units and all these different mindsets, and all of a sudden now you're forced into an environment that is a little challenging. And so what do? You either stand your ground and you say, nope, this is my past experience is relevant across all planes of current challenges, and you guys, you're not going to bend or conform. Or you come in and you have a little humility and you listen to what people are having to say and you say, yeah, okay. And when the opportunity presents itself after you've worked your ass off to kind of earn your place at the table, then the people that are in charge, whatever that natural hierarchy or the imposed hierarchy, they'll start looking over and say, what do you think? And that gives you your opportunity,
Right.
But
So-
people don't know that much.
Let me ask you this. Like, working for the agency in whatever organization or capacity that is, he just made a good point. Like, what's it like with, like SEALs showing up to join the team, or Green Berets or Rangers or guys from different branches? Like,
dude,
is there like like an exponential competitiveness or something? Or?
No, I'll go off on that for a while. 'cause
Please do.
this is-
You
like,
have a
this
great
is-
perspective
This
on it.
it was so fucking cool, and it was like really eye opening because you come from one unit, one specific military branch, and you think your shit is like it doesn't stink and we're better than everybody else, and then you get downrange and you get thrown into this melting pot of guys from each one of these branches, and it took me
and different skill levels and experience levels.
You'd have guys from Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 and Rangers and cops, and like it's just like wild, man. and it was so cool because it taught you it wasn't about the branch or the or the background. It was always about the dude.
Hands down.
Always.
Yep.
And it didn't matter. It didn't matter if the dude had a long tab or a trident or if he was a SWAT cop. It was like, that guy's fucking solid.
Yep.
And you didn't care. You didn't care. Like, oh, that guy was a team guy. That lasted like 5 fucking minutes.
Really?
Yeah, because I mean, once you'd been there for a while, like nobody fucking knew and nobody cared. It was
Nobody
like,
cared.
I don't know. Yeah, everybody knows Rut was a team guy.
Let's parallel that over to this podcast being entrepreneurial based. For those people listening, what does that sound like to you? Sounds like a job interview to me. And a resume. No one gives a shit about your resume. What they care about is when they interview you and how you sell yourself during an interview.
Kind of, which is you have to have a basic prerequisite in order to get your foot into the door. Like you're obviously not gonna bring somebody on the team that can't shoot, that doesn't have a comprehension of tactics, because there has to be some type of level set playing field where everybody at least knows. Yeah, like
trust.
Like
a baseline of trust.
I'm not gonna get, and I've done this where I when I was really early on, when I was doing random shit wherever you'd be looking at part, looking at a dude going, where did you come from? Oh, and then the guy would say, oh, I was this, and you're like, oh fuck. Oh fuck. Okay.
I was
and then
a police officer in Atlanta. What? Wait, what?
Yeah.
Dude, do you know what IAD means? What? I'm not.
Yeah, but aren't cops really good drivers though? They are, right?
Nah, it depends. But the funny thing is like, but that was a question early on, and then you get to know guys and you work with them for several years, and you're like, oh, okay, well, fuck, I don't even know what that guy did after a while. You're like, oh yeah, what? You did that too? Holy shit, I didn't know that. But it's always the prerequisite when you're early on. You're like, what did you do? And then when you're later on, you're like, because you would have wide varieties of background, and then you'd always have to watch a few of the guys, because you're like, okay, well, this dude doesn't even know. He doesn't know what it's. He's never even seen the elephant, like he doesn't know what things are like when things get fucking loud, and that's a whole. There's an infinite jump in a person's perspective, especially in a combat scenario, prior to an actual, however, a gunfight or any type of, a complex attack or whatever it might be. There's this massive learning that takes place within seconds that you're like, okay, well, fuck, I know at least what I'm dealing with this guy, because he hasn't been there. So I'm going to have to really fucking watch him. And not only that, like I'm more importantly, I'm going to have to speed him up, because this shit happens fast. So you're going to have to. And I remember it because the CIA guys that we did the invasion with, the ground branch guys, like they were just like fucking cool as cucumbers, dude, man. They were just like
Icemen.
Yeah. Like dude's wearing cowboy boots and fucking jeans with a fucking mag in his back pocket, just like, don't worry, I got this fucking knife, I'll be all right. I'm like,
dude,
what?
crazy.
Yeah, crazy. And you're like, dude, I got like 50 magazines and fucking frags and everything else. And
bro.
You're like, how the fuck am I going to get to this dude's level? And this guy's dangerous, And I think I remember like the last thing I did in Kabul. I was like, I shoved a fucking mag in the back of my pocket and fucking put a pistol, tucked it into my fucking waistband.
A la
like,
Mel Gibson.
Let's just fucking go. Get in the fucking car, rookie. Let's go.
I love it, dude. But it's about the common language, right? When is everybody able to speak the common tongue, right? Initially, in any job or place you come, it's babble to everybody.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody's got, your tones are different, the language is different. And then in a short period of time, you either learn to speak the language and be able to be proficient with the knowledge base, or, man, it's apparent. And the peer evaluation, that's the one beautiful aspect about that type of job and that living. Peer evaluation is instantaneous and can happen very quickly.
Yep.
In the civilian world, it takes a much longer period of time to teach everybody to speak, and a much longer period of time to get rid of those bad apples.
Right. So were there guys that came in that like were totally motivated to learn as quickly as possible, and then at the same time were there guys that like just weren't motivated to learn stuff or thought they knew everything or whatever.
Oh,
For sure.
Tons of those personalities.
Yeah.
Like,
All the SEALs.
I think, and it's funny because, and I'm not saying this because Dave's here. Like, SEALs will sometimes take it on the chin, but they don't. It's just a matter of, I think it's one of those things where they're not taking it on the chin. They're just like, all right, team guys, you know, because of the books and because of a lot of the stuff that's come out. But it's like, man, like I said before, whether you're a Force Recon guy or Green Beret or a fucking Ranger or a SEAL, it didn't matter
at all.
It did not matter. Mm-hmm. You would see the most squared away, like AJ squared away fucking team guy from, you know, SEAL Team 4. And then right next to him, you would see a guy from SEAL Team 6, and you're like, oh man, this
serious?
Like really? You were there?
Yeah.
Same thing with like Delta. I remember putting a guy through a selection, and my buddy from Delta was like, "There's no way, no Delta guy can fail your course." And I was like,
Okay.
And I'm not shitting you. Probably 2 weeks later, this dude came through. And I picked up the phone and I called him. And I was like, hey, Chris, do you know... and I said his name.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, fuck. Everybody
Doesn't matter.
has their bottom 10%.
So funny. It's like he knows Todd as well. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Todd sitting there like Buds is about to start, and he's sitting there in the room, and he sees like all these like body of Adonis dudes walking. He's like, man, there's no goddamn way I'm going to make this. There's no way in hell. And then he said this one kind of pudgy dude walked in. He's like, man, is that guy a SEAL or something? They're like, oh yeah, he's a SEAL. Todd goes, oh, I got this.
I got this.
He goes, if that motherfucker can pass Buds, there's no way in hell I won't pass Buds.
Yeah. Well, there's a great story that, you know, I love listening to, you know, I'm a big fan Jacko Podcast. Who isn't, right? And
so good.
And they had Mike Sorelli on, and Mike Sorelli is one of the most incredible human beings, you know, and I don't know him, but everything I've heard from guys that have worked with him. He was on the roof with Mike Mansour. He was at Gold Team when Extortion 17. He's got a master's at, you know, University of Texas in business and, you know, research. I mean, guy's off the charts. Former recon Marine, enlisted, became an officer. I mean, he's a special person. And, you know, he and Jacko started talking about Ryan Jobe, who we lost, you know.
The guy with
the eye who died. And they were in buds together, and like he was like, he actually came over from recon, and he went and he had words with him, and he was like, hey man, you know, you might want to think about quitting, you know. And he took, if you were a little pudgy in buds whatsoever, you were the lightning rod. And a good buddy of mine, Hank, got, like, he was little, you know, he's an E5, so he's older, he's a SAR swimmer, he's been in the Navy, and he's a little pudgy, and he was the senior corpsman too. But so every day he got hammered extra for not only being the senior corpsman, but also being not in the ideal shape.
Robust.
And it made him harder and harder and harder and harder and harder. Just like they said with Ryan, you couldn't, and then, you know, after they graduated, he went up to him and said, hey man, I'm really sorry I said that to you. And for me, it always goes back to, I walk into a room and have really worked hard to recondition myself, in particular what I do for a living now, which is work with companies and work with sports teams and all this, and as a motivational coach. And I force myself to say everybody's even.
Right.
I don't give a shit, right? I don't care who in the room is different. I'm not going to pass judgment by the way you look, by the way you sound, by what I think I know of you. Everybody's on the same playing field until I can start asking questions and hearing the way people speak and what their knowledge base is. And then you see how they act. And that's part of, you know, running a business and recruiting and picking good people is, you know, having that intuition, but also, you know, knowing that person that's going to be patient to where they learn that common language.
Yeah, it's funny. So going back to 2010, so
remember you, dude, you're like, all right, dude, you're going there. Holy shit, have fun.
Yeah.
Some shit had just happened there. We went out and you're like, you know, have fun out there. And then, dude, we called back and we're like, we need more dudes. And you and the other guy was in charge, came down, and you're like, holy shit.
Dude.
I have no idea what y'all are talking about, but I like to imagine in my head, and it sounds like fun.
No, we so Dave and I were talking, this was 2010, and you had Frog Logic at that point.
Yes, I started Frog Logic in 2006. I had my second trip to Afghanistan, second trip with Blackwater. I was doing running a building project, building the Afghan border police training facilities in Gardez and Herat. And so I designed I was helping design the barracks, actually the senior SEAL really designed this great design, but I had drawn out the stuff for the ranges and where to set everything, training stuff. And cause I had just finished doing that in Azerbaijan. And like the day before I left, they're like, right, you like doing this shit? Here's another job for you, And I was like, yeah, I'll take it on the chin, and they'll bill the U.S. government for 3 jobs I was doing and only pay me for 1, right?
Right.
So I'm doing that, and but I'm also doing the counter drug stuff, and I was training them, and then we're doing mentoring. So we did this at up north, and typically you walk into a compound, what's everywhere? Kids. I mean, they're kids. Oh, yeah. It's the number one challenge you have, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is kids, right? Because there's so many kids, and they're all freaked out. Well, not really.
When you say walk into a compound, you mean like doing the dirty business?
Yeah,
or just like visiting? Or just...
No, you're not visiting.
No,
you could say we're visiting.
We were
doing your job.
We were doing our job,
right.
and my first trip, it was right after, not even a year after 9/11, and I thought that I needed to cultivate hatred in order to do my job efficiently. And one of the big things that allowed me to propel that myth or that falsehood, which really had a detrimental effect on me long term, was an ODA team was out driving around eastern Afghanistan, and as they would stop, hearts and minds stuff, the best people in the world doing it. Lead vehicle brought some kids over to hand out Skittles or whatever.
Right.
13-year-old kid comes up, boom, grenade in the front seat, blows the dude up. And so, we're driving around in these DPVs, we're out.
What's a DPV?
Desert Patrol Vehicle.
Okay.
And so I got so bad, hated everybody so bad, like I'd rig up a pistol on my steering thing. And the kids, if they didn't like it, they'd start chucking rocks at us coming through. So I'm drawing down on kids, ready to shoot kids in the forehead, because I allowed that to be right. Well, next level, I'm in this compound, and for the first time, I call it one of my big God moments. Like God kind of touched me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, look at these children, though. Really look." And Afghan kids, right? 13-year-old girls, receptacles for procreation, beaten, whipped, hammered. Little boys, raped, beaten, whipped, no school, no education, iron fists, 14th century shit.
Yeah.
And that is not cool. And so for the first time I saw that, and I was like, shit, I want to do something to help that. I don't want to carry my gun forever. I want to do something that's going to give me that self-actualization. That's going to give me that, that altruistic purpose. That's what it is. But I initially thought, because of my medic stuff, that I could work with Doctors Without Borders or USAID, and, just not culturally doesn't work. So came back off that deployment, kept the research, and just began to discover that the kids in America were really starting to flounder. And so that spring, I wrote my first book, my first Frog Logic Concepts book, which was a kid's book on developing self-confidence for ages 8 to 13, because I believe that's the pivotal shit for kids. And that's when Frog Logic was born, was in that moment. And man, did I not know what the hell I was doing.
So what is Frog Logic?
Frog Logic Concepts is a motivational training and coaching company, as well as a distribution of content too, right? And my idea is basically there are 4 main components that the human condition needs to address on a regular, reoccurring basis. 1, we have to understand our fear, learn to embrace it, and utilize it as a propellant instead of that that paralysis that typically grasps people because we don't spend. I mean, how many fear classes have you taken in your career? How many times have you really sat down and thought about everything you're afraid of, written it out, adjusted it, done all this? Nobody. I give an Embrace Fear speech in front of 1,000 people. I ask that question. 2 people raised their hand. One person had to do it in a Psych 101 course in college, and the other one, their shrink made them do it because, they can't leave their house. But most people don't address it. So, I believe people have to embrace fear. 2, self-confidence. Every day our self-confidence, Evan, you know this more than anybody else on the planet, man. You come into work, you're taking these massive risks with all these people's lives that are depending on you. You're making this decision. Man, that jars a person's self-confidence, but he has the tools that he can rely on that get him back in the fight every day after being knocked down. Self-confidence, critical. 3rd one is the team orientation, right? So much of our society is breaking that down now, and in the individualistic I got mine mentality is pervasive, especially with and I'm a big fan of social media and its positive aspects, but man, it's really a detriment socially when you look at, hey, look at me, give me a like, make me feel verified, right? So I call it the team life. So I help people understand what it actually takes to put the team ahead of self. And then the final one, which I believe is the biggest one of all, because the ultimate questions you need to ask is, why am I here and what is my purpose, is how to live with purpose, how to actually start that train moving towards something that you can say, hey, this is my purpose in life right now, and I feel pretty good waking up every day.
That's really interesting. 3 and 4, I totally understand that. The first one, like writing down your fears, I've never heard of that. I've never even thought about that. Right. And the thought of actually sitting down, and I started thinking, like, I'm terrified of horses. Like, I'm serious.
Yeah.
But it's like, shit, man, I've never thought about that. And then the confidence thing, I would describe myself as overly confident. Like, I don't think there's anything in this world that I can't do.
Cool.
How do you create self-confidence? Like, how that's fascinating. How the hell do you do that?
Well, I'll take one, and then you can do you can layer it in with actual professional words.
Dude, you're a professional at this stuff, bro.
The funny thing is, man, it's like conquering fear and self-confidence. They're actually, in my mind, they're tandem. So they work in tandem.
Exactly.
And you have to, when you lay out your list, and then in my life, I've laid out the list, but then anytime fear starts to come up, you have to conquer it. You have to smash it and not bury it. You have to defeat it, and or start to develop the tactics in order to defeat fear itself.
Cut the head off of it, right?
Well, for the moment,
right?
For the specificity of that existence, that fear that comes in at that moment, the true nature of that specific fear, because fear is always going to come back.
So, like, thoroughly define the fear and understand it from start to finish.
Well, you might not. Well, that's the problem,
that's
is that it's so fucking complex. And when you have a lifetime of conquering fear, and it's repetition, you have to get in and continue to dig and dig and dig and dig at it. I built a life around going out and seeking challenges and in order to overcome fear, so I could deal with it. So there are aspects of this where you could say I am a professional at conquering fear.
Hands down.
And I remember really early, and I had this conversation with one of my first instructors in the Special Forces qualification course. His name was Jay Stubbs. Incredible guy. And he was talking about adrenaline-based activities and then acclimating the physical circumstance in order to prepare yourself for combat, basically.
Stress inoculation. And he's like, he was talking about that in the course, and he's like, who does this? And I was like, well, I try to go out and I do really scary shit. I go whitewater kayaking and whitewater rafting. Middle of the woods.
I climb fucking mountains.
Yeah.
I leave and intentionally go into the woods by myself, because it's fucking dark and it's scary and you can only depend on yourself.
Yeah.
And I intentionally do things that are somewhat physically difficult and put myself into places where I might live or die, because I think at that point, I was 22 years old trying to answer this question. And I was like, well, I didn't know necessarily why I was doing it, but then when he said it, I was like, oh, okay, well, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm trying to push myself past fear. And I remember the first time I stepped out into the woods by myself for an extended stay, and it was a long, hard trip, and it was actually there was snow on the ground, and it was fucking icy, and I had snowshoes, and I was a fucking train wreck.
Yeah.
Trying to get up.
You were
the side
little
of this.
too, weren't you?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like
your grandfather, didn't he?
Oh, he used to drop me off all the time.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
But
that's
really, like by myself under like really hard conditions, because I was probably when I was 20, and I was heading up into this really a pretty nasty place in the Selway Wilderness area in the winter. And I drove my Jeep out there and was like, all right, well, this is how much food I got. This is what I got. This is how many miles I got to do. And that was kind of, I think, where I started that, but then it continued to develop. And one of the things that we used to talk about, or I used to talk about it all the time with GRS, was that dudes would never confront each other. They would never confront each other, and they would never hit guys straight on with a question and or a disappointment or anything. I'm like, but if you can't conquer the fear of your peers and or say to them what you feel is where they're falling short, or where you can give them an actual accolades to say you're doing fucking amazing.
Yeah.
If you have that fear, that barrier, how are you going to step out of a car and fucking get in a gunfight in the middle of the street with only one other guy that you can't even confront and tell him that you either love and respect him, or you think that he needs to raise his game to a certain level? And so I intentionally was very radically transparent with people, to the point of which it was sometimes very detrimental because of the communication.
Yeah, for your career and the way the traditional aspect of that, because of the posturing, because of the sensitivity towards that, because of that mythical sense of, hey, you're not respecting me, that whole nonsense, it made very difficult for you.
Yeah, I mean, there were times, it was definitely a lightning rod of sorts, because of the things that I would tell people. And there was way better ways for me to do it. Like super, I look back on it now.
I was going to see how, if
way better ways. I could have done this a million times better in a better
Youth,
way.
brother.
Youth, misspent youth. But I am interested. Like, I do want to hear your side of that too.
Well, the great challenge is, and Evan is the anomaly, right? And that's who I become fascinated with mostly in my life, because you can study the bell curve for sure, and I think by studying the bell curve you can hit a nice component of acceptance of what maybe your performance thresholds are with a minimal amount of work. But if you're fascinated, you're a truth seeker, and you really want to expand your capabilities, whether it's business, whether it's your personal life, whatever, man, you got to start checking out these people who live out here. So from an early age, he was out in the woods, and from an early age, he was swinging an axe. And from an early age, this is the life that you will be taught, because this is the expectation of the people who are the greatest, most profound influence in your life, your grandfather, your father, right? So he was the anomaly with fear, but most people, they don't do it at all, right? And the craziest aspect of it is, you're wired. You are hardwired for fear. And the studies now coming out, because we've got the 3D spec scanning and all the different neuroscience that we're just breaking through on. I'm saying me like I'm one of those geeks, but that's how fast I geek out on this stuff now. Is they're saying, man, you're literally the way our neuroplasticity works. Because of the amygdalas and the way it functions and the way it can override your prefrontal cortex, your limbic system, man, it's crazy. And when I first discovered this, it was through a guy named Charles Morgan, who was at Yale, who'd been studying you guys for 30 years in the SEER program. And it was, and it's like, they'd put the before all the wazoo shit, he was like, all right, let's put a BP monitor on an SF guy versus, another dude. We're going to put him in hard cell, smacking the shit out of him. And these guys are operating at 150 beats per minute. Their palms aren't sweaty. Their mouth isn't dry. They're able to answer not only those questions, but they're giving them like crossword puzzles to solve at the same time to see if they can shift sporadically and readjust kind of their problem solving capabilities. Whereas, the other guy, the ground pounder over here, is at 192. They can't think straight. They can't. So they're like, holy shit, what's going on there in the brain?
It's like they did that cold water testing with Stu Smith.
Bro,
they put him in a tub of water, filled it full of ice, and they're like, all right, this, most people you'll be able to, like, they wanted to get out and like do some stress tests, shoot some pistols. And they put Stu in there, and like 7 minutes later, they're like, okay, we're going to go ahead and pull you out now because this isn't working. Your temperature's staying the same and it's not affecting you.
Stu is a remarkable human being and is a brilliant person on this stuff. If you haven't ever checked him out, I highly recommend you checking it out. So the reality that comes out of that is we're wired for fear. It's not going anywhere. And I've gone through as many case studies as I find to try and find that person who isn't, right? Whether it's psychopathic behavior, sociopathic, whatever it is. And I found like there's one case study of this chick that Harvard had done back in the 50s who her amygdalas were underdeveloped. And so you could put like a full-grown male cat in front, lion in front of her. She'd be like, hi, kitty, You like want to pet it and shit where everybody else is like, right? But we have it. It's not going anywhere, right? And you're taught fear your whole life, right? Think of what we teach our children, right? Yeah. My girls have memorized 16 rules so far, and every time something poignant comes up, right? And there's 7 and my children are 7 and 5, and my other 2 are 10 and 6 from my girlfriend. And I've just started them memorizing the rule. But like rule number 1, safety first. Rule number 4, don't go near strangers. Hell, rule number 13 is embrace your fear, right? So we're conditioned, we're wired, we're conditioned. But yet, along the way, the only way we get to learn how to embrace our fear is through experiential education, right? Through the stress inoculation, by doing it. So now if you live in this protective, a bubble where you're not being challenged on how to manage those physiological reactions, those psychological reactions, the emotional reactions on a regular reoccurring basis, and what happens? You have the need for a lot of safe spaces, right? So within that, and Evan's 100%. So every time he goes out into the woods in that extreme environment and succeeds, what happens to his self-confidence?
Goes up
exponentially. And what else? He has a detailed anchor point of what that looks like, right? A cognitive reference point to what that looks like. Because the experience is not just, oh, you did well in school, pat on the back, or, hey, way to play on the soccer team. You guys didn't win a game. No one scored a goal, but here's a beautiful trophy for you.
Right.
How is that anchored to the physical, mental, and the spiritual all connected, man, to really drive home that self-confidence? So that becomes the challenge, right, is to coalesce the evolution together. But I firmly believe that if you don't have a real solid understanding on what's making you afraid, because how many people, I asked this question, all right, who in here is afraid of, spiders, right?
Right.
And,
right.
200 hands go up. Well, why? And because they'll kill you. And I go, do you know how many spider deaths there are? You about 6, and 5 of them are in Australia, right?
Right.
What about public speaking? Who's afraid of that? Everybody's friggin'. Yeah. So I'll bring somebody up on stage with me in front of everybody, and I'll say, and you see them, they're like, holy shit, they turn white. They're a mess. Then I turn them around, I face me, I put the mic in their phone, and I say, tell me about your family. Tell me about, and then someone will pop up and they'll say, tell me the details. How tall are they? How this? Tell me what makes you laugh about them. And you see it just changes in them. And then they start, because they get that emotional anchor and that peacefulness, and boom, it's over. But what are the real fears? I mean, what are the ones that you really got to work on? I mean, am I going to screw up my children? Am I going to mess up my relationship? Am I going to fail in this business that how many people are counting on me, right? But nobody's doing the exercise, man. And it's a shame. It's a real shame.
It's interesting. I have when I was so I'm 43. When I was 12, I got thrown off a horse at my family's farm. And got back on the horse, rode him back to the barn.
Pivotal age.
I've never been on one since. September the 6th, I start a 6-day elk hunt in the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness. And we are on a horse into that for 24 miles. So it's like, okay, I have no other option.
Immersion.
But to deal with this. Because, I mean, like I told the guy, I was like, well, it's like maybe I could come to Daly and hiking. And he goes, oh, it's 24 miles and no, you're going to have to ride a horse. I was like, all right, cool, man. That's fine.
Well,
I'll do it.
What I love about you, though, is just in the 5 seconds we've met each other, you have an analytical process that's working in hyperdrive, right? And I love that about you. You seem like you have an intense logical perspective, right?
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes, right? When it goes beyond, it kind of it gets out of control. My brain thinks very similar to yours. But the conditioning, and I do this with athletes. I've worked with UFC fighters. I work with tennis players. I work with the Boston Red Sox right now. I've worked with the Miami Dolphins, and everybody's like, oh, what do you beat them? You put them in water and you make them carry logs. And no, it doesn't. It's a hoo-yah. That's fun to a test, but that's not how I work, right? That is not for everybody, right? But one of the things that I do is this conditioning, right? And it's through that stress inoculation. So if I were you, I mean, you don't have much time now. Hell, man, I'd go just get on a horse for 10 minutes, and then ride it around a thing for 20 minutes and ride around it for 30 minutes. And that way, by the time you hit it, you haven't done any real immersion training, but you have a reference point of your fear saying, wow, hey, I can do this, I can do that. And so it'll drop the other stuff way down.
So what I did, the way I operate is, I tend to do a lot of things last minute because when there's a deadline, the wheels, you have to perform.
Yeah.
I function better that way. So I called the outfitter I'm going with and I said, hey man, do you have any other slots? He goes, I got 2 spots left. I said, all right, I'm going to take them both. So I called a bunch of my friends. I was like, hey man, what are you doing this? Oh, I'm busy. I can't do it. I found one of my buddies, one of my best friends that hunted with in Africa a few times. We go past 2 years together. I said, Jamie, I want you to come on this elk hunt with me. He was like, hell yeah, man. What's the deal? I was like, dude, Selway Bitterroot, 24 miles on horseback. He goes, I'm in. Where do I send the check? And then he goes, hold on a second. You're terrified of horses. I said, that's why you're coming.
Yeah, awesome.
Because, and here's why.
Let me ask you and I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's in my head. Do you love this guy?
Yeah, he's like a brother. I refuse to fail in front of him.
So think about the power of that, right? Which we often don't do. What happens when our fear is big? We get shameful in it, right? We compartmentalize it. We like if we're messing up at work, right?
Yeah.
You see people won't tell anybody. They'll cower. They'll try and cover it up and tell the absolute. Or people that are mismanaging their home finances and they just they don't tell it. It just builds and builds and builds, and then all of a sudden it caves in. Instead of the counterintuitive thing is which we learn in the soft community because it's essential. The existential reality of your death is permanent at all specific time and place, right? So if you're going to shortchange me on your truth, man, you're going to get me killed, and that ain't cool.
So what I'm doing is I'm combining 2 fears to solve the problem of one. Terrified of horses. If I'm there in camp with 4 or 5, 6 strangers, the way I would perceive it, fuck these guys, I'll never see them again, I don't care, whatever. But if my best friend's there, I refuse to fail in front of someone or let someone down or have their opinion of me change. Oh, shit, we canceled the hunt, Baker won't get on a horse. So that's never going to happen. So I'm combining 2 fears to solve one.
Well, I like the operant mindset. I mean, I love negative positive. It's a wonderful way to work with yourself in particular because it works, especially for guys like us. But I'm full-blown fan of positive, man. And, so, what I would say is, if you're in that space and it does provoke you, give him a little sign that say, hey, man, just to touch you when he sees it on you. And that's your reset point for going, oh wow, it's presenting itself externally.
Safety word.
Yeah, bro. Now you're talking
Yeah,
about it.
there you go. Yeah.
No, but it's also
Red Sparrow.
It's interesting also, like when I'm an avid hunter. I hunt a lot, and like I go out in the woods and wilderness and up and down mountains and stuff, and it's like being friends with guys like Evan and Matt and Todd, you know, Andy Stump, things like that.
You
It's
can't
like,
really be friends with Andy though. He's too exceptional.
he's a
He is.
curmudgeon.
Yeah, he's just like,
You have to kind of like just be fringe friends, I think.
yeah, but that's a good way of describing
It's
it.
interesting.
Like, I respect and admire what he does, and if I get next to him, it's really cool.
It oozes off
Yeah.
a little
Like,
bit.
maybe it'll just like shower on me.
We had him on his show once, and that's my only engagement with him. But like afterward, like I stood up straighter.
Yeah.
I was like, man, dude.
Shoulders pinned back.
I was like, damn, man, I feel good.
But guys like that have an effect on me, even when they're 3,000 miles, 2,000 miles away from me. Because what I do is like, if I'm, all right, I got to get to that peak. There's an elk over there or whatever. And I'm tired. And it's like, okay, the right move on this animal is to go back down around 2 miles and come in on that side because the sun's setting or the sun's coming up and it's the thermals are kicking up and the wind's shifting. Or I'm tired. I can be a lazy piece of shit and just go beeline it to him 400 yards and maybe that'll work. That's not going to work. And what I do, no offense to you, Evan, or any of you guys, it's like, if those sumbitches can accomplish all the stuff that they have, I know that I could. So like you may not know this, are like a constant gnat in my life. Like, it's like, don't let Evan down, don't let Todd down, do it the right way. What would they do if they were here? Okay, I'm going to do what they would do, but I'm going to do it better than them.
Well, and that goes back to, we talk about it all the time. Who do you want to surround yourself with in your business? And who are you going to be a partner with? Are you going to be a partner with a person that has the capacity to embrace fear, has great self-confidence, can rebound back, is genuine, is honest, has a strong emotional connection with you, and it doesn't bring too much ego into it? I mean, that's how making these tough choices, I think, in business, what messes people are in such a rush to jump in, get to the market as fast as possible, and they don't really think about it a little bit. They don't position themselves in the right capacity. They don't understand the market well enough, and they just go balls to the wall, and then they fail.
Right.
2 weeks ago, before I moved here, I was sitting in Evan's office, and we were talking about standing up another podcast. And Evan said, you ever heard the 2/3, 1/3 rule? I was like, no. He goes, 2/3 is planning, 1/3 is execution. And if you spend the time to plan things out, executing them is easy. And I was like, that's pretty heavy. I'm going to write that down.
Well, I think it's a common thing for a lot of military guys. And the fortunate thing that I've had is just being able to digest some of these things intellectually and emotionally and be able to say, okay, where have I failed? Where have I succeeded? To have an honest conversation with yourself. And I've had more than enough opportunity to have really honest conversations with myself. So for me, ego and a lot of this stuff where, the freedom of what my background has actually provided me is fucking incredible.
It's the greatest MBA you could ever imagine, I believe. And I think you nailed it. As long as you can have an honest discussion with yourself, right?
And a lot of people won't do that. I think there's a lot of guys from our community, because they haven't been beaten down. Maybe they haven't really had some relatively big mistakes or whatever it might be. But those big mistakes, you can define who you are and how you actually triumph over tragedy in a lot of these things. And I think, I've been really, really fortunate to just, one, if you, as a man, if you go out and you accomplish something like, you get something like a green hat that says that you're really tough.
Which I love, by the way.
Yeah. But you can take that and say, okay, well, I don't need to go do a bunch of other stuff to prove that I'm actually a really tough man guy. I don't need to do that. I used to have this conversation a lot with people, and people were like, well, because I was talking about I was baking scones or something in my house in Colorado.
I love that you bake scones.
And,
I love that
and my
story.
buddy was like, does that like not mess with you? emotionally, like, you know, you're baking scones. I'm like, no, man, I want to learn how to bake a scone because I'm like super into it. I love scones. I'm going to learn how to fucking bake them. And he's like, yeah, but is it like, doesn't it like mess with you? You know, like you're a dude. And I'm like, no, man, like I was a Green Beret. I was like, no, man, I'm a Green Beret. Like I could be, you know, baking scones in a fucking dress, wearing high heels and sucking a dick. I don't fucking give two shits. Like it doesn't bother me whatsoever. I don't give a shit.
So he was like getting into like Green Berets should not be baking scones.
Like I'm totally fine with who I am, man. I want to learn how to bake a fucking scone. If I want to learn how to do something, I'm not going to be like, oh well, I can't do that because I'm a man.
And then what happens? You bake that scone and you turn it into a multi-million-dollar company, right? Yeah. So you know what's more masculine than that? Well, suck on that, buddy.
I think my first pan of scones actually turned out like one big giant mushy fucking cookie. But other than that, but I kept going, and I don't think I ever made a really good scone. But the whole thing in that was like that freedom and the context that allowed me to do whatever I've done post that. And I have friends now, and I'm sure you do, which, you know, I'm 41 years old, and I talk to my buddies from high school, and they're in their 40s now. And they are going through other psychological issues that I don't have, and I will never have those. Like, oh man, I should have done this and I should have done that. And I'm like, remember when we were, you know, and I was having this conversation with one of my friends. I was like, remember when we were in college, and you know, and we were in high school together, we were in junior high, and we were in elementary school together. So we had gone through life basically at that point.
Yeah.
But I had completely changed. So, you know, I'd gone off and I'd joined the Army and I'd come back, and I said, to the hell with society, right? I'm going to do whatever it is that Evan does, and I'm just going to do exactly what it is that will make me happy. It will put fulfillment in my belly every day.
That's so awesome.
And I opted out of all of it. You know, I wasn't like, you know, the fraternity party dude or anything. I was like, you know, running 100 miles a week and fucking wearing like really just random bullshit because I wasn't interested in clothing. I wasn't interested in this. The only thing I was interested in was trying to push myself. That was it. Truth. And those guys back then, and and it's not me. I'm not bad mouthing those guys or anything, but those guys looked at me.
Different paths.
They looked at me and they're like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, this is like, and I remember this conversation so well. I was talking to somebody. I was like, I'm going to go be a Green Beret and eventually join the CIA at whatever fucking age it was, you know. And they're like, dude, no way. You're not going to, you're
never going to make it.
You're never going to make that or whatever. Or
don't you want to get married and get a job?
Dude, you're going to miss out on the greatest time in your life. That's what one of those dudes said. He's like, you're going to miss out on the greatest time of your life, college, like drinking and fucking banging out randos. And like, I'm like, dude, if this is the greatest part of my life, I'm fucked. Like, is this like I'm not even an adult, man. I got a ton of shit that I want to do, and none of this exists in this fucking world. Like, I have a ton of stuff that I'm interested in seeing, you know, and none of it has to do with like how many fucking beers I can drink against some other fucking, you know, some other dude in the basement of a frat house. Like, that doesn't. I don't want to be a beer pong player, man. Like, I want to be able to fucking. I want to go see shit that will be DNA changing
code. You are rewriting
I want to rewrite my fucking code. This is life.
Yep.
I wasn't even thinking about it in this context, and it's only been the last couple of years where I've really been able to kind of wrap my mind around it. The world is so, I should say that the universe, the galaxy, the earth, and time, it's so infinite. In being able to put yourself into perspective in a way that says, I am nothing, but this is all I have, right? I am nothing, but this is it. My reality and what I do right now on this earth matters. Actually, every second matters.
Every second.
Every fucking second. Because I don't know exactly what's going to happen on this the next adventure that my soul will take. I don't know.
No. You hope. I mean, I hope, but you don't know.
You hope.
You hope. You pray.
You keep your fingers crossed. You know, you prepare. You live a good life. But I'll tell you what, the sponge of life, like that thing isn't going to be left on the counter full of water, dude. I'm going to wring every last drop out of it. I'm going to put it in the fucking oven. I'm going to burn that thing to a fucking crisp, shake it off. Like everything I can get out of this, like I'm going to get it all. And I think for me, there's a differentiating factor psychologically for a lot of guys when you're talking to like dudes that haven't lived like that.
Thank you for listening to Launch Code. This concludes part 1 of 3 of our conversation with David Rutherford.